The United States of America claims to be the protector and promoter of democracy around the world, but its actions are poles apart from its professed values. Ever since World War II, the U.S. has assumed the position as the leader of the free world and claims to be the paragon of democracy. Successive American presidents have claimed to make the promotion of democracy and the protection of human rights the cornerstone of the U.S. foreign policy. Several organizations, including the Department of State and USAID, are allocated billions of dollars to this end. Yet, America's record in promoting and upholding democratic values in the Third World is as tainted as it could be. Countless events have shown that the strategic interests and geo-economic goals of the U.S. have always trumped its moral values. America's perpetual support of brutal authoritarians in the Middle East and Latin American states is not hidden from anyone. India, under PM Narendra Modi, which is now the biggest strategic partner of America, was once on a no-fly list to the states due to his complicity in the massacre of Muslims in the Indian state of Gujarat in 2002. Yet, the biggest irony is found in the case of Pakistan. Created in 1947 after a bloody independence from Britain, the contrast in American actions and values in regard to the relationship with Pakistan cannot be more absurd. Out of the 75 years of its existence, Pakistan has been under dictatorial rule for almost half of its life. The four military dictators were not only legitimized by the U.S., but Pakistan was also an indispensable strategic partner of America under their rule. American presidents provided billions of dollars in unconditional aid to these dictators despite their appalling record in human rights. Moreover, America looked the other way at issues most crucial to international security, such as nuclear proliferation. Let's take a look at Pakistan-U.S. relations under these dictators and analyze the geopolitical interests of America at play. Pakistan first came under direct military rule when the Army Chief General Ayub Khan seized power from a democratic government in 1958 and abrogated the constitution. As president, he initiated an extensive economic reform program that only favored the wealthy and created a deep economic divide in the country. His belligerence in foreign policy pushed Pakistan into a catastrophic war with India in 1965. Yet, despite his aggressive and totalitarian nature, the American government fully backed him because of the strategic and intelligence help he provided during the Cold War. Pakistan provided geostrategic air bases to America through which the latter carried out espionage on the Soviet Union. A diplomatic flashpoint was triggered when the Soviet Union gunned down an American reconnaissance plane over its territory that took off from Pakistan. The U-2 incident, as it came to be known, posed serious security threat to the region. He reigned the country for over 10 years and destroyed its democratic institutions. He resigned in 1969 owing to political pressure, but his tyranny did not end with his rule. Just before stepping down from power, he passed the reins of the country to another military dictator, General Yahya Khan. General Yahya Khan turned out to be more brutal and authoritarian than his predecessor. It was during his tenure that the movement for independence of Bangladesh began to gain momentum. Instead of addressing their political grievances, he launched a massive military operation to suppress the protests. The unrestrained use of force resulted in human rights abuses on the scale seen in Yugoslavia and Rwanda. Official figures by Bangladesh assert that the Pakistani army killed nearly 3 million people, raped nearly 300,000 women, and displaced more than 10 million people. It is clear that the Pakistani army acted on the instructions of Yahya Khan. But despite the unprecedented atrocities he unleashed on the people of Bangladesh, he maintained unconditional support from America. This is probably because of the mediating role he played in normalizing diplomatic ties between the U.S. and Communist China. Even when President Richard Nixon visited Pakistan on his way to China, he had nothing to say about the genocide in Bangladesh. But perhaps the most consequential dictator who brought never-ending devastation to Pakistan and the region was General Zia-ul-Haq, came to power after toppling the democratically elected government of PM Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. He did irreversible damage to Pakistani society and politics. The origin of extremism and religious fundamentalism in Pakistan can be traced back to him. His rise to power is attributed to the Russian invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. The U.S. needed a reliable ally to repel the Red Army, and Pakistan had the geographical advantage and military capabilities to be an American proxy in the war. However, an authoritarian government with a centralized structure in Pakistan was preferable to America. Given the socialist tendencies of PM Bhutto, America extended its support to the military general in dismantling democracy. With military and financial support from the U.S., he raised a guerrilla force in Pakistan to combat the Soviet army in Afghanistan. The guerrilla force came to be known as the Taliban. They were wrongly indoctrinated in religious seminaries with the concept of jihad, and then armed with American weapons to fight the Russian army. When the war was over, the Taliban formed an oppressive government in Afghanistan and denied fundamental human rights to their people, particularly women. The source of their oppressive and misogynistic philosophy was rooted in the religious education they received at the American-funded seminaries. Moreover, the devastation of war brought widespread poverty and unemployment. With no source of income, people resorted to cultivating poppy, and soon, Afghanistan morphed into the world's largest producer of opium. According to one estimate, more than 50 million people became addicted to opium in Afghanistan and Pakistan in the early 1990s. Another impact of the American generous supply of weaponry to the Taliban was that it got into the wrong hands after the war. Sophisticated weapons were easily available in the black market, which led to the creation of various militant groups and culminated in a civil war in the two countries. As if 3 military coups were not enough to push the country into extreme poverty, societal chaos, and religious extremism, Pakistan witnessed another coup in 1999. After a decade of political interference by the military, Army Chief General Pervaiz Musharraf deposed Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, put him behind bars, and made himself the president. Initially resented by the U.S. government, the Bush administration embraced him with open arms in the aftermath of 9/11. He became a key ally in the American war on terror in Afghanistan and provided strategic support in terms of logistics, intelligence, and manpower. As Pakistan unconditionally supported the U.S. in destroying al-Qaeda and the Taliban, these militant organizations declared war on Pakistan. Resultantly, the most disastrous phase of the country's history began. Between 2001 to 15, 70,000 people were killed in various terrorist attacks. The economic cost of the war was even more enormous. An estimated loss of $100 billion was incurred on the economy of Pakistan. On the domestic front, he encouraged and appeased the religious right for political support and persecuted liberal forces rooting for democracy. Once again, America ignored its much idealized values of democracy and human rights when its strategic interests were at stake. It cannot be a coincidence that every time America needs geostrategic help from Pakistan, a military dictator topples a democratic civilian government and assumes power indefinitely. Such authoritarian regimes not only suspend fundamental human rights, but also make it impossible for future civilian governments to work efficiently, thus perpetuating a circular path of political instability and military rule.